professor, physician, epidemiologist. I am Dr. Sri Banerjee. Hello, I'm Dr. Sri Banerjee, core faculty for the College of Health Sciences and Public Policy at Walden University with a joint faculty appointment at Rouse University School of Medicine. And in this video, I'm going to quickly go over something that I've gone over in previous videos and lectures, and that's the PICO model. The PICO stands for Population, Intervention, Comparator, and Outcome. So it can be intervention, it can be some sort of exposure, and then the comparison group. So it's really important to be formulating questions using this model. However, there's another model that I want you to be familiar with, and that is the grade approach. And what that grade approach does is it takes this question and kind of extrapolates it into how we can come up with a credible answer. An important issue to be addressed is that of the certainty of the answer. So if you have a research question, the grade approach will assess the certainty or the quality of a body of evidence is a critical element. So this should be considered from the outset in relation to any research question. So the first step consists of highlighting those PICO elements, but then and then the comparison's outcome, but then differentiating these from those that are important but not critical is important. So I wanted to switch over to the grade criteria, and this is an NIH. It's an NIH paper, and this actually goes through the grade approach, and this was one of the papers that actually applied the grade approach. So the grade approach working group was established in the year 2000 and continues as a community of people striving to create systematic and transparent frameworks for assessing and communicating the certainty of the available evidence used in making decisions in healthcare. So whenever you have interventions, there's actually a small n. There's not a huge sample size. So one of the ways to circumvent that is to create frameworks that will allow evidence to be evaluated. So grade is such that it'll provide a framework for health scientists to understand the certainty of the evidence, which is in coherent domains. So when you have the grade approach, then you can apply this to any study that is out there. The grade approach, here's the methodology that was used, and this was actually used in modeling a modeling project group workshop in Hamilton, Canada. And this was a collaborative effort by Common Principles for the Application of Grade Assessment. So there was a workshop, and this terminology was used, how to apply this model, and there were several themes that were available here. So there's assessing the certainty of outputs from a single model. So when researchers develop their own model, a lot of times it's considered sufficiently direct to the problem at hand. They should assess the certainty of its output. So evidence generated from the model is sometimes just as important as what is going into the model, like a research question that goes into the model for grade domains. So this is only halfway through the paper, but looking at assessing indirectness in a single model, it requires evaluating two separate sources of indirectness. So it's the inputs and then the outputs. So then there's the risk of bias across models, imprecision across models. Um, so this goes into what I like about this paper. It goes into some of the details about the working group without actually going into too much detail. So this provides an overview understanding of the grade approach. And then the grade approach itself is actually provided here. Um, in fact, it's used by the government as well. Well, theirs is a more, it's called a graded approach, which is a bit different. So this provides some um, reviews of the grade approach in different handbooks. I just wanted to provide one more resource surrounding this. Grades of recommendation, assessment, development, and evaluation working group. So that's the grades working group. Recommendation, assessment, development, and evaluation. So if you go through this grade approach, then you can better understand how to expand on the research question that you've created. So this is in a nutshell. This is all part of the grade approach. You can take a look at the model that was used initially in the grade approach, and then take a look at some of these papers that have been published and shows how to use them. Again, another paper of the grade approach and systematic reviews guideline. A lot of people do systematic reviews, so grading of recommendations, assessment, development, and evaluation grade. Again, overview of grade, and then this goes into a diagram which is provides formulating questions like outcomes, outcome prioritization, systematic review, evidence profile. And then randomized controlled trials, high certainty observation trials, low certainty. This goes into a lot of different recommendations and guidelines that you can follow on your own time. But there's quite a few different different subsections. So certainty of evidence is one. Risk of bias for randomized controlled trials. Randomization or allocation concealment, lack of blinding. And then study weights in a meta-analysis. Consistency of results is generally assessed on the relative effect scale. Indirectness is present when included studies do not entirely match the PICO precision. Publication bias. So evidence to recommendations and implications is included for patients and clinicians, and then good practice statements. So there's a lot of different and specific components that are important in a in the context of understanding more detail about the level of evidence that is provided through the grade framework. Thank you for listening.